The rehearsal dinner was supposed to be a celebration. That's what everyone kept saying anyway. My mother, my best man Derek, even the wedding coordinator who'd been hovering around with her clipboard and forced smile all evening. Just a celebration, she'd chirped. A chance for both families to come together before the big day. But standing in the ballroom of the Riverside Estate, an 18,000 square foot Georgian mansion that had been converted into one of the most exclusive wedding venues in the state, with its soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens that rolled down to the river, I felt anything but celebratory. The room was packed with roughly 70 people, split almost perfectly down the middle. On the left side, near the ornate marble fireplace, were my people. My mother in the dress she'd bought from JCPenney and altered herself because alterations were expensive, my sister Maria with her husband and their 2 kids, who kept trying to touch everything breakable, my cousins from my father's side who'd driven 6 hours to be here, my college friends who'd taken time off work, my colleagues from the accounting firm where I'd worked for the past 4 years since graduating. Working class people, mostly. Teachers and nurses and small business owners and office workers. People who saved for months for vacations and drove cars until they literally stopped running and considered Olive Garden a nice dinner out. Good people. People who'd shown up for me my entire life. On the right side, clustered near the French doors that led to the terrace, were Vanessa's people. Her parents, Richard and Patricia Whitmore, holding court like minor royalty, surrounded by her extended family and their country club friends. Her father in his custom-tailored suit that probably cost more than my entire wedding outfit. Her mother dripping in jewelry that could have paid off my student loans twice over. Her brother Preston with his wife and their designer-dressed children, who were somehow less messy than normal children. Her sorority sisters, who all looked like they'd stepped out of a Ralph Lauren catalog. Old money people. People who summered in the Hamptons and wintered in Aspen and use summer and winter as verbs. People who had investment portfolios and trust funds and family lawyers on retainer. People who'd never had to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. Who'd never worked a service job. Who treated anyone in the service industry like they were invisible. I'd known from the beginning that Vanessa and I came from different worlds. We'd met 3 years ago at a charity gala my firm had sponsored. I'd been there representing the company. She'd been there because her family donated 6 figures annually and sat on the board. We'd ended up talking at the bar while waiting for drinks, and I'd made her laugh with some stupid joke about tax law. And somehow that had turned into dinner, which had turned into a relationship, which had turned into me proposing 6 months ago on a beach in Santa Barbara. Her parents had never liked me. That had been clear from our first meeting, when I'd shown up at their house in my best suit, which was still obviously off the rack and not tailored to my body, and Richard had looked me up and down like I was something unpleasant he'd stepped in. But they'd been civil, mostly, politely distant. They'd never openly objected to our relationship, though I'd caught Patricia making pointed comments about Vanessa's previous boyfriends, all of whom had last names I recognized from buildings and scholarships and articles in the business section. Tonight, though, something felt different. There was a tension in the air that I couldn't quite name, a current of something ugly running beneath the surface of forced pleasantries and champagne toasts. The rehearsal itself had gone fine. We'd run through the ceremony twice, figured out the timing, sorted out where everyone would stand. Vanessa had looked beautiful in her casual dress, smiling and laughing and squeezing my hand every time we made eye contact. For those 30 minutes, I'd almost felt like this was going to work, like we could bridge the gap between our families and our backgrounds and build something real together. Then we'd move to the rehearsal dinner. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. The caterers had set up a long table at the front of the room for the wedding party and immediate family. 24 seats, 12 on each side, with Vanessa and me in the middle, facing out at everyone else. It was supposed to be a place of honor, I guess. A way to make us the center of attention. I'd approached the table with my mother on my arm, ready to help her into her seat, when Richard Whitmore stepped directly into my path. He didn't say anything at first. Just placed his hand flat against my chest, not quite a push, but firm enough that I had to stop walking. Close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and vaguely woody that probably came in a bottle that cost more than my monthly car payment. "Actually," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room, "we've rearranged the seating slightly." I looked past him at the table. The place cards had been moved. My mother's name, which had been next to mine, was now 3 seats down. My sister's name had been moved even further. In their places were Patricia's sister and Richard's business partner. The immediate family should sit closest to the bride and groom, Patricia said, appearing at her husband's elbow. She was smiling, but it was the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sure you understand." "My mother is immediate family," I said, keeping my voice level despite the heat rising in my chest. "Of course," Patricia said, and her voice dripped with condescension. "But we've been planning weddings in our family for generations. There's a certain protocol, a certain way things are done." My mother squeezed my arm, and when I looked at her, she gave a tiny shake of her head. "Don't make a scene," her expression said. "It's not worth it." So I swallowed my anger and guided her to her new seat, 3 places removed from where she should have been, and watched as the Whitmores settled themselves into the positions of honor like they'd won some kind of battle. The dinner progressed with excruciating awkwardness. Conversations kept starting and stopping, people from my side trying to make small talk with people from Vanessa's side and being met with polite but frosty responses. The food was excellent, some kind of herb-crusted salmon that probably cost $50 a plate, but I barely tasted it. I was too focused on the way Patricia kept whispering to the woman next to her and glancing at my mother. The way Richard kept checking his watch like he had somewhere more important to be. The way Vanessa's sorority sisters kept giggling and looking at Derek, who was sitting uncomfortably in his rental tux that didn't quite fit right. After dinner, Richard stood to give a toast. He tapped his champagne glass with his knife until the room fell silent, then cleared his throat with the self-importance of someone who was used to people listening to him. "Tomorrow," he began, "our daughter Vanessa will be married. It's a momentous occasion, a sacred joining of 2 families." He paused, looked directly at me, and I saw something cold in his expression. Of course, we'd always hoped Vanessa would marry someone from our world, someone who understood our values, our traditions, our way of life. Another pause, longer this time. Someone from a family with similar backgrounds. The room had gone completely silent. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. But, Richard continued, and I heard the condescension in every syllable, "Vanessa assures us that Marcus is a good man, hardworking, responsible, and I suppose those are admirable qualities, even if they're not quite what we'd hoped for." I felt my face burning. People at my tables were shifting uncomfortably. My mother was staring at her plate, her hands clenched in her lap. Patricia stood then, placing her hand on her husband's arm in a gesture that looked affectionate but felt calculated. "What Richard is trying to say," she said with that same false smile, "is that every family brings something different to a marriage. The Whitmores bring our legacy, our position, our breeding." She said the word breeding like she was talking about horses. "And Marcus's family brings?" She paused, pretending to search for words, though I could tell this had all been rehearsed. "Well, I'm sure they bring something valuable, even if it's not immediately apparent." Someone laughed. One of Richard's business associates, I think. The sound broke the tension slightly, and a few other people chuckled nervously. I looked at Vanessa, expecting to see horror on her face, expecting her to stand up and defend me, to tell her parents that their behavior was unacceptable. But she was looking down at her lap, her cheeks pink, and when someone at her sorority table whispered something, she let out a small, nervous laugh. That tiny, performative laugh that said she was embarrassed, not by her parents' cruelty, but by me, by my family, by the fact that she'd chosen someone from the wrong side of the tracks and now had to deal with the social consequences. Patricia wasn't done. She raised her glass higher, and I watched with a kind of detached horror as she prepared to deliver what was clearly meant to be the killing blow. "We just want to make sure," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room, pitched perfectly for maximum audience, "that we don't introduce poor genes into the Whitmore family line." She said it lightly, like it was a joke, like it was a playful jab rather than a calculated insult designed to humiliate me in front of 70 people. And then Vanessa laughed again, not a nervous laugh this time. A real laugh, joining in with her mother's joke, joining in with the scattered laughter from her side of the room, publicly agreeing that yes, my genes, my family, my background, my entire existence were inferior to theirs. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember excusing myself from the table. The next thing I was fully aware of, I was standing outside on the terrace, my hands gripping the stone balustrade so hard my knuckles had gone white, staring out at the gardens and trying to remember how to breathe. Behind me, through the French doors, I could hear the party continuing. Someone had turned on music. People were laughing and drinking and probably congratulating themselves on their cleverness, on putting the poor boy in his place. "Marcus?" I turned. Derek was standing in the doorway, his expression a mixture of anger and concern. "That was—" He trailed off, apparently unable to find words sufficient to describe what had just happened. "That was really fucked up, man." "Yeah. Are you okay?" "No." He moved to stand beside me at the railing. We'd been friends since college, had lived together junior and senior year, had been each other's best men at life's various disasters. He knew me well enough not to offer platitudes or try to minimize what had just happened. "What are you going to do?" he asked finally. I looked back through the windows at the party. At Vanessa, who was now laughing with her friends like nothing had happened. At her parents, who were accepting congratulations from their social circle like they'd just scored a victory. At my mother, who was sitting alone at her reassigned seat, looking small and tired and humiliated. "I don't know," I said. "But I can't marry into that family. I can't do that to myself. To my family. I can't spend the rest of my life being treated like I'm not good enough, like I'm some kind of charity case they're graciously allowing into their gene pool. So call it off. The wedding's tomorrow. We've spent... I did the math in my head, felt sick. $32,000 on this wedding. Most of it mine. I've been saving for 2 years. My mom took out a loan for $5,000 to help. If I cancel now, we lose everything." "Better to lose the money than lose yourself," Derek said quietly. He was right. I knew he was right. But $32,000 was more money than my mother had earned in a year when I was growing up. It was 2 years of careful saving, of not taking vacations, of eating cheap meals and driving my car with the check engine light on because I couldn't afford the repair. The thought of just throwing it away because my fiance's parents were classist assholes felt impossible. "Let me think about it," I said finally. "I need to think." Derek nodded, squeezed my shoulder once, and went back inside, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the sound of the river flowing below. I stayed out there for another 20 minutes, watching the sun set over the gardens, thinking about Vanessa's laugh, about my mother's face, about the casual cruelty of people who'd never had to struggle for anything. And then I remembered something. A business card in my wallet that I'd been carrying for 3 months, ever since the day we'd first toured this venue and everything had been finalized. I pulled out my phone and made a call that would change everything. The woman who answered sounded exactly like I remembered. Warm but professional, with the kind of voice that suggested she was used to being listened to. "Marcus?" she said, sounding surprised. "Is everything all right? The wedding's tomorrow, isn't it?" "Yes, Mrs. Chen, it is." I took a breath. "I need to ask you for a favor, a big one, and I need you to understand that what I'm about to propose might seem crazy." "I'm listening." Her name was Chen, and she was the owner of the Riverside Estate. Not the manager, not the event coordinator, but the actual owner of the entire property, the mansion, the gardens, the 12 acres of riverfront land it all sat on. A property worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $8 million, according to the real estate websites I'd looked at when we'd first started venue hunting. We'd met 3 months ago during our final venue walkthrough. Vanessa and I had been touring the property with the events coordinator, a woman named Melissa who'd been showing us the ballroom options and explaining the catering packages. Catherine had been there that day, overseeing some renovation work on the East Wing, and she'd stopped by to introduce herself. She was in her mid-50s, I'd guessed, though she had the kind of ageless quality that wealthy people often had. Good skincare, expensive haircuts, personal trainers, the works. But there had been something in her eyes, a shrewdness, an intelligence that suggested she'd earned her money rather than inherited it. "You're the groom," she'd said, shaking my hand with a grip that was surprisingly firm. "Marcus, right? Melissa tells me you're an accountant." "That's right. Good profession, stable, important." She'd turned to Vanessa. "And you must be the bride, Vanessa Whitmore, if I'm not mistaken." Vanessa had preened slightly. "You know my family?" "I know of them," Catherine had said, and I'd noticed she didn't elaborate on whether that knowledge was positive or negative. "Your father owns Whitmore Development, doesn't he?" "He does. We've been in real estate development for 3 generations." "Impressive." Catherine had turned back to me. "And your family, Marcus, what do they do?" It had felt like a test, though I wasn't sure what kind. "My mother's a nurse. My father died when I was 12. He was a mechanic. My sister teaches elementary school." "Teachers and nurses and mechanics," Catherine had said, nodding slowly. "The people who keep society actually functioning. I respect that." She'd handed me her business card. "If you need anything, and I mean anything, during your wedding planning, you call me directly. Not Melissa, not the events team. Me. Understand?" I'd taken the card, confused but grateful, and tucked it into my wallet. We'd finished the tour, signed the contracts, put down our deposit. I'd forgotten about the strange interaction until just now, standing on the terrace while my future in-laws mocked my genetics. Now, on the phone, I explained everything that had happened at the rehearsal dinner. The rearranged seating, Richard's toast, Patricia's comment about poor genes, Vanessa's laugh. Catherine was silent for a long moment after I finished. Then, "Those absolute bastards." "Yeah." "And your fiancée laughed." "She did." Then she's a coward, and you shouldn't marry her. Catherine's voice was sharp, angry. I'm sorry to be blunt, but that's the truth. A person who won't defend you to their family is a person who will throw you under the bus the moment it's convenient. I know, you're right. I struggled to find words. The wedding's tomorrow. Everything's paid for. I don't know how to. How much did you spend? $32,000, most of it mine. My mother took out a loan for $5,000. And the Whitmores? They paid for the flowers. $4,000 worth of flowers. Catherine made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been disgust. Of course they did. Flowers, the most visible, most photographable part of the wedding. Meanwhile, you're going into debt for the actual substance of the event. That's about right. Marcus, let me ask you something. What would you do if money wasn't an issue? If the $32,000 didn't matter? I didn't have to think about it. I'd walk away. I'd call off the wedding and never speak to any of them again. Okay then. Okay then what? We're going to do exactly that, but we're going to do it in a way that makes sure everyone, especially Richard and Patricia Whitmore, understands exactly what they've lost and who they insulted. Mrs. Chen, I appreciate the support, but I can't afford to just throw away. Marcus, do you know why I gave you my personal business card? No. Because I liked you. Because in 20 years of running this venue, I've met hundreds of couples, and most of the grooms are either entitled trust fund babies who treat my staff like servants, or nervous yes men who let their brides and their future in-laws walk all over them. But you were different. You were polite to everyone. You learned the names of my catering staff. You asked intelligent questions about the logistics of the event. You reminded me of my son. Your son? He died 10 years ago. Car accident. He was 24, about to graduate from college, about to start his career. He was studying accounting, actually, wanted to help people understand their money, wanted to work with families like the one he grew up in. Her voice caught slightly. He was a good man. He would have done important work in the world. And then he was gone, and all the money I'd made building this business couldn't bring him back. I'm so sorry. Thank you. The point is, when I met you, I saw some of him in you, the same kindness, the same work ethic, the same awareness that not everyone gets born into privilege, and some of us have to fight for everything we get. So when I gave you my card and said to call if you needed anything, I meant it. I still can't ask you to just give me back my money. I'm not giving you anything. I'm offering you an opportunity, a chance to make a statement, a chance to show the Whitmores and everyone at that rehearsal dinner exactly who you are and exactly what they've lost. She paused. Do you trust me? Did I? I'd met this woman once for maybe 30 minutes, 3 months ago. I didn't know her, not really. But something in her voice, in the way she'd listened to my story and immediately understood not just what had happened, but why it mattered, made me believe she was genuine. Yes, I said, I trust you. Good. Here's what we're going to do. She laid out the plan in detail. It was audacious. It was probably cruel. It was definitely going to blow up my life in ways I couldn't fully anticipate. But it was also perfect. One question, I said when she'd finished. Why are you doing this? Really? Because people like the Whitmores have been treating people like us as inferior for centuries. Because I'm tired of watching good people get stepped on by people who think their bank account makes them better humans. Because your mother took out a loan to help pay for your wedding, and now she's going to watch her son be humiliated by people who spent more on flowers than she makes in 2 months. And because, her voice hardened, I really, really hate classist assholes. I laughed despite everything. When do you need me there? Meet me at the front entrance tomorrow at noon. Don't tell anyone. Not your family, not your friends. Especially not Vanessa. This only works if they have no idea what's coming. Okay. And Marcus, get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a very interesting day. After we hung up, I stood on the terrace for a few more minutes, watching the last of the light fade from the sky. Inside, the party was winding down. People were starting to leave, heading back to their hotels, preparing for tomorrow's ceremony. I should have gone back inside, should have tried to talk to Vanessa, to confront her about her laugh, to maybe give her one last chance to show that she could stand up to her parents and stand beside me instead. But I didn't, because I already knew how that conversation would go. She'd apologize, probably. She'd say her parents put her in an impossible position. She'd promise it would be different after we were married, and part of me, the part that had loved her for 3 years, that had proposed to her on that beach, that had imagined building a life together, would want to believe her. But I'd seen who she really was tonight. When the pressure was on, when she had to choose between her family's approval and my dignity, she'd chosen their approval without hesitation. That was who I'd be marrying if I went through with this wedding. Someone who would always choose the path of least resistance. the path that kept her in her parents' good graces, even if it meant sacrificing me in the process. I went back inside, found my mother getting ready to leave, and told her I loved her. She hugged me tight and whispered, "I'm sorry about tonight. Those people are horrible. You don't have to marry into that family if you don't want to." "I know, Mom, I know." I found Derek and told him I had a plan but couldn't tell him what it was yet. He looked skeptical, but nodded. "I trust you, man. Whatever you need." I avoided Vanessa entirely. Let her believe I was just upset and needed space. Let her think tomorrow would proceed as planned. I drove back to my hotel, not the same one where Vanessa and her family were staying, thankfully, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling until the sun came up. At 11 a.m., I put on my wedding suit, a charcoal gray three-piece that I'd bought off the rack and had tailored to fit. It wasn't custom-made like Richard's suits, but it looked good. I looked good, professional, confident. At 11:45, I got in my car and drove to the Riverside Estate. It was time to show them exactly what poor Jeans could do. The parking lot of the Riverside Estate was already half full when I arrived at 11:50. Guests were streaming in through the main entrance, dressed in their wedding finery, chatting and laughing and taking photos in front of the mansion's impressive facade. The weather had cooperated beautifully. It was a perfect June day, sunny but not too hot, with a light breeze that kept the humidity at bay. I parked in the far corner of the lot, away from the main flow of traffic, and sat in my car watching people arrive. I recognized most of them, my cousins, Vanessa's sorority sisters, colleagues from my firm, Richard's business associates. They looked happy, excited, ready for a celebration. They had no idea what was about to happen. At exactly noon, a silver Mercedes pulled into the space next to mine. Catherine Chen got out, and I barely recognized her at first. She was dressed in an immaculate black suit with a cream-colored silk blouse, her hair pulled back in a sleek bun, wearing jewelry that was understated but clearly expensive. She looked like someone who owned things, important things, someone you didn't ignore or dismiss. "Ready?" she asked when I got out of my car. "I think so. Are you sure about this?" "Marcus, I haven't been sure about anything this much in years. Come on, we're going to make an entrance." We walked across the parking lot together, Catherine slightly ahead of me, moving with the kind of confident stride that made people step aside instinctively. As we approached the main entrance, I saw a few heads turn, a few people do double takes. The front doors of the Riverside Estate were grand, 15 feet tall, solid oak, with brass handles and intricate carved details. They were propped open for the wedding, with large arrangements of white flowers, Patricia's $4,000 flowers, on either side. We walked through those doors side by side, and I watched the ripple effect as people noticed us. Whispers spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Phones coming out. People pointing. Melissa, the events coordinator, saw us first. She'd been standing near the entrance with her clipboard, checking names off her guest list. When she spotted Catherine, her face went white. "Mrs. Chen," she said, hurrying over. "I didn't realize you'd be attending today. Is something wrong? Is there a problem with the—" "Everything's fine, Melissa," Catherine said calmly. "I'm here as Mr. Chen's guest." "Mr. Chen's—" Melissa looked at me, confused. "Marcus and I have become friends," Catherine said, and she said it loudly enough that the people around us could hear. "I wanted to be here to support him today." More whispers. Louder now. I heard someone say, "Who is that woman?" And someone else respond, "I think she owns this place." We moved deeper into the mansion, heading toward the main ballroom where the ceremony would take place. The hallway was packed with guests, and I watched them react as we passed. Some people I knew, my colleagues, my family members, looked confused but pleased to see me. Others, Vanessa's friends, her family's social circle, looked suspicious, uncertain. The ballroom itself was stunning. Melissa and her team had transformed it overnight from rehearsal dinner to wedding ceremony. There were rows of white chairs, set up theater style, creating an aisle down the middle. The altar at the front was decorated with more of those expensive flowers, white and ivory and pale pink, arranged in towering displays. Soft music was playing from hidden speakers. Everything was perfect, exactly as Vanessa had envisioned. I scanned the room and found the people I was looking for. Richard and Patricia were standing near the front, greeting guests, accepting congratulations. They looked exactly like they had last night. Smug, satisfied, convinced of their own superiority. Richard saw me first. He said something to Patricia, and they both turned to look. I watched their expressions shift from surprise to confusion to something like concern as they realized I wasn't alone. They started walking toward us. Richard moving with the kind of purposeful stride that suggested he thought he was about to take control of a situation. Patricia followed a step behind, her face arranged in that same fake smile from last night. "Marcus," Richard said, and I could hear the forced joviality in his voice. "Good, you're here. Vanessa was worried you might not show after you left so abruptly last night." "I needed some air," I said calmly. Of course. Weddings are stressful. We understand." His eyes moved to Catherine, and I saw him trying to place her, trying to figure out who this elegant woman was and why she was with me. "And who might this be?" Before I could answer, Catherine extended her hand. "Catherine Chen. I own this venue." Richard's handshake faltered mid-grip. "You own the Riverside Estate, yes. The mansion, the gardens, all 12 acres. I've owned it for 20 years. She withdrew her hand. "I'm here today as Marcus's guest." Patricia had gone very still. I wasn't aware that the owner typically attended the events held at her venue. "I don't typically," Catherine agreed, "but Marcus and I have developed a friendship over the past few months, and after what I heard about last night's rehearsal dinner, I felt it was important to be here in person." The temperature in the immediate vicinity seemed to drop several degrees. Other guests were gathering now, sensing drama, forming a loose circle around us. I saw my mother standing with Maria, both of them looking confused. I saw Derek watching intently from near the altar. I saw Vanessa's sorority sisters clustered together, phones out, undoubtedly recording. "What you heard?" Richard repeated, his voice carefully neutral. "And what exactly did you hear?" "I heard that you made a toast suggesting Marcus wasn't good enough for your family. I heard that your wife made a comment about not wanting poor genes in the Whitmore line. I heard that your daughter laughed at both statements, publicly humiliating her fiancé in front of 70 people. Catherine's voice was pleasant, conversational, but her eyes were ice. "Did I hear correctly?" The silence was deafening. Richard's face had gone from its normal ruddy color to an unhealthy purple. Patricia was frozen, her smile finally dropping, replaced with something like panic. That's not... We were joking," Patricia stammered. "It was a joke. Marcus knows we were joking." "Interesting," Catherine said, "because I've never found classism particularly funny, and I certainly don't think jokes about genetics and bloodlines are appropriate regardless of the context." More people were gathering now. The circle around us had grown. I saw several of Richard's business associates looking uncomfortable. I saw my mother pushing her way through the crowd, Maria right behind her. I saw Vanessa herself, emerging from a side room where she'd presumably been getting ready, still in her regular clothes, her face a mask of confusion and growing horror. "Mrs. Chen," Richard tried, switching tactics, adopting the kind of smooth, reasonable tone he probably used in business negotiations. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Whatever Marcus told you." "Marcus told me the truth," Catherine interrupted. "But don't worry, I've prepared documentation." She reached into her suit jacket and pulled out a small folder. From it, she extracted several printed pages and handed them to Richard. "What is this?" he asked, not taking them. "The first page is a transcript of last night's rehearsal dinner toasts. One of my staff members was working the event. She heard everything and, knowing I'd become friendly with Marcus, sent me a detailed report. Your exact words are on that page, Mr. Whitmore, as are your wife's, as are the documented times that several people laughed at their comments, including your daughter." Richard snatched the papers from her hand, his face darkening as he read. Patricia leaned in to look over his shoulder, and I watched her face go white. "The second page," Catherine continued, "is a copy of the venue contract for today's event. You'll notice that it contains a clause, standard in all my contracts, prohibiting discrimination, harassment, or hateful speech toward any person based on their socioeconomic background, among other factors. Violations of this clause result in immediate termination of the contract and forfeiture of all deposits and payments." "You can't be serious," Patricia said, her voice rising. You paid $4,000 for flowers. Marcus and his family paid $32,000 for everything else. The venue rental, the catering, the staff, the photographer, the musician, $32,000 that I am hereby refunding in full." She pulled out another piece of paper, a check, already filled out, made out to my name. I couldn't see the amount from where I stood, but I could see Richard's expression when he caught a glimpse of it. "This is ridiculous," he exploded, abandoning all pretense of civility. "You can't cancel a wedding based on some overheard conversation. You'll be in breach of contract. We'll sue you into oblivion." "Please do," Catherine said calmly. "I would love to have your attorney explain to a judge why your family's right to make bigoted statements about someone's economic background supersedes my contractual right to maintain a discrimination-free environment at my venue. I'm sure that will go very well for you in court and in the press. because I will make very sure the press hears about this case in detail." Vanessa had pushed through the crowd now and was standing next to her father, looking between him and Catherine and me with an expression of mounting panic. "Marcus, what's happening? What's going on?" I looked at my fiancé, soon-to-be former fiancé, and felt a strange kind of calm settle over me. "What's happening is that I'm not marrying into a family that thinks I'm genetically inferior. What's going on is that Mrs. Chen is shutting down this wedding because your parents are classist bigots and you laughed along with them." That's not, "Marcus, please, we can talk about this." "We could have talked about it last night," I said, "when it happened. You could have stood up and defended me. You could have told your parents that their behavior was unacceptable. You could have shown me that when it mattered, when the pressure was on, you'd choose to be on my side. But you didn't. You laughed, and that tells me everything I need to know about what our marriage would have been like." "I was nervous." Vanessa's voice had gone high and thin. "I was put on the spot. I didn't know what to do." "You did know what to do. You just chose the option that kept your parents happy instead of the option that respected your fiancé." Catherine had been watching this exchange with interest. Now she turned to address the crowd, which had grown to include probably 50 people, maybe more, most of the guests, staff members, even the photographer and musician. "I want to be very clear about something," she said, her voice carrying easily through the ballroom. "This wedding is canceled. The venue contract is terminated. Everyone will need to leave the premises within the next hour. I'm very sorry for the inconvenience to those of you who traveled to be here, but I cannot in good conscience allow my property to be used to celebrate a union that was built on one family's contempt for another family's economic background." "This is insane," Patricia shrieked. She'd abandoned all pretense of dignity now, her carefully constructed society, matron facade cracking completely. "You're ruining my daughter's wedding because of a joke, a harmless joke." "If it was so harmless," Catherine said coolly, "then explain why Marcus's mother is over there crying." I turned to look. My mother was indeed crying, Maria's arm around her shoulders, both of them watching this unfold with expressions of shock and pain and, underneath it, something that looked like fierce pride. "You don't get to decide what's harmful to other people, Mrs. Whitmore," Catherine continued. "You don't get to insult someone's family and their background and their worth as a human being, and then dismiss their pain as oversensitivity. You don't get to be cruel and then be surprised when there are consequences." She turned to Melissa, who had been standing frozen throughout this entire exchange. "Melissa, please begin escorting guests out. Inform them that there will be no ceremony today and that they'll receive formal notification regarding any planned reception or related events. Be polite but firm. I want everyone off the property within an hour." "Yes, Mrs. Chen," Melissa said, and she actually looked relieved to have clear instructions, something concrete to do in the midst of this chaos. People started moving then, some leaving immediately, others clustering in groups to discuss what they'd just witnessed. I heard at least a dozen phones buzzing with notifications. People were already texting, already posting to social media, already spreading the story of what had happened at the Riverside Estate today. Richard was staring at Catherine with an expression of pure hatred. "You've made a very big mistake. Do you know who I am? Do you have any idea how much influence I have in this state?" "I know exactly who you are," Catherine said. "You're a small man who inherited money from his father and thinks that makes him better than everyone else. You're a bully who's been getting away with treating people badly because most people are afraid of your money and your connections. But I'm not afraid of you, Mr. Whitmore. I have my own money, my own connections. And unlike you, I earned every bit of it myself." She pulled out another piece of paper. I was beginning to realize she'd come very well prepared, and held it up so Richard could see it. "This is a copy of an article that will be published in tomorrow's business section of the newspaper. I called in a favor with an editor friend last night. It details what happened at your daughter's rehearsal dinner, including direct quotes from multiple witnesses. It discusses the long history of classism and elitism in certain old money families in this region, and it prominently features the Whitmore family as a prime example." "You wouldn't dare," Richard said, but his voice had lost its conviction. "It's already done. The article goes to print tonight. By tomorrow morning, everyone in your social circle will know exactly what kind of people you are." She paused. "Unless, of course, you'd like to apologize, publicly, to Marcus and his family, for your behavior last night and your assumption that you could treat them as inferior without consequences." I watched Richard's face cycle through emotions: rage, fear, calculation, pride. Part of me wanted him to apologize, to show some capacity for growth or self-reflection, but a larger part of me knew exactly what was going to happen. "I have nothing to apologize for," he said finally, drawing himself up to his full height. "Come on, Patricia, Vanessa, we're leaving." He turned and strode toward the exit. Patricia hurrying after him. Vanessa stood there for another moment, looking between her departing parents and me, visibly torn. "Vanessa," I said quietly, "you have to choose, right now. You have to decide who you are and what you stand for." She looked at me, and I saw tears in her eyes. "Marcus, this is crazy. We can still fix this. We can still get married. We just need to..." "To what? Pretend your parents didn't show who they really are? Pretend you didn't laugh at their jokes about my genetics? Pretend we can build a marriage on that foundation? They're my parents, and I was supposed to be your partner, the person you chose, the person you stood beside no matter what. But when it came down to it, you chose them." I took off my engagement ring, the one I'd spent 2 months' salary on, the one I'd slipped onto her finger on that beach in Santa Barbara, and held it out to her. "I hope they're worth it." She took the ring with shaking hands, crying openly now. Then she turned and ran after her parents, leaving me standing there with Catherine Chen and a ballroom full of witnesses. The noise level in the room had risen considerably. People were talking over each other, pointing, recording, processing what they'd just seen. I heard someone say, "Holy shit, that was savage." I heard someone else say, "Good for him. Those people were awful." I heard a third voice say, "This is going to be all over social media in like 10 minutes. Derek appeared at my elbow, grinning wider than I'd ever seen him grin. "Dude, that was the most badass thing I've ever witnessed in real life. I'm going to regret this, aren't I? Maybe, but right now, you're a legend." My mother pushed through the crowd, Maria right behind her. "Marcus, baby, what just happened?" I hugged her tight. "I chose us, Mom. I chose our family over theirs." She pulled back to look at me, tears streaming down her face. "You didn't have to do that. You didn't have to give up your wedding." "Yes, I did. They don't get to treat you like you're less than them. They don't get to insult you and me and everything we come from and then expect me to just take it. You raised me better than that." Catherine appeared beside us, and my mother turned to her. "Mrs. Chen, thank you for standing up for my son, for us. Mrs. Morrison, your son didn't need me to stand up for him. He stood up for himself. I just provided the platform." Catherine smiled. "And please, call me Catherine." She handed me the check she'd shown Richard earlier. I looked at the amount and nearly dropped it. $32,000. Every penny we'd spent on this wedding, refunded in full. "I can't accept this," I said automatically. "Yes, you can. My venue, my rules. I'm terminating the contract due to violation of the discrimination clause. That means full refund of all payments. It's literally in the contract they signed." She looked around the ballroom, at the decorations and flowers and careful arrangements that would all be dismantled now. "Besides, consider it an investment in justice. Sometimes the universe needs a little help evening the scales." "What happens now?" I asked. "To all of this. The ceremony was supposed to start in 45 minutes. "Now?" "Now we have a party," Catherine said. "Well, technically we can't have a party on the property since the event contract is canceled. But there's an excellent restaurant about 3 miles from here, family-owned, great food. I'll call ahead, see if they can accommodate a last-minute group. We'll celebrate you dodging a bullet and beginning your new life free from classist in-laws." "I'm in," Derek said immediately. "Me too," Maria added. My mother was nodding, still crying but smiling now. I looked around the ballroom at the assembled guests, the ones who'd started to leave but stopped when they realized something extraordinary was happening. Most of them were my people, my family, my friends, my colleagues, the people who'd shown up to celebrate with me, who'd taken time off work and bought new outfits and driven long distances because they cared. "Okay," I said, "let's do it. Let's celebrate." The restaurant Catherine had called ahead to was called Russo's, and it was everything the Riverside Estate wasn't. Warm, unpretentious, family-owned for 3 generations. The kind of place where the owner knew regulars by name, and the portions were generous, and the decor was more beloved grandmother's dining room than magazine photo shoot. When our group of about 30 people arrived, my immediate family, Derek, and a few college friends, some colleagues from work, and Catherine herself, the owner, an Italian man in his 60s named Vincent, didn't bat an eye at the sudden influx of people in wedding attire showing up with no reservation. "Catherine," he called out, emerging from the kitchen with a dish towel thrown over his shoulder. "You said you might bring some friends. I didn't expect a wedding party." "Not a wedding party," Catherine corrected. "An anti-wedding party. We're celebrating Marcus here dodging a bullet." Vincent looked at me, still in my wedding suit, still processing everything that had happened in the past 2 hours, and then back at Catherine. Then he started laughing, a big booming laugh that made his whole body shake. "Oh, I gotta hear this story. Come on, come on. We'll push some tables together, get you all fed. You want the full Italian experience? Multiple courses, wine, the whole thing? That sounds perfect, I said, finding my voice. But Vincent, we're a lot of people, and we showed up with no notice. Are you sure? Are you kidding? This is what we do. This is why we're here. He waved away my concerns. You think I'm going to turn away a celebration because it's not the celebration you originally planned? Please, life is full of surprises. We adapt. We celebrate anyway. Now come, sit. Let me feed you. Within 20 minutes, he and his staff had arranged tables in a large U shape in the private dining room, set out bread and olive oil, opened bottles of wine, brought out antipasto platters that seemed to appear from nowhere. The room filled with the sound of people talking, laughing, releasing the tension of the past few hours. I found myself at the head of one table with my mother on one side and Derek on the other. Maria and her family were across from us. Catherine was a few seats down, already deep in conversation with Vincent about something that involved a lot of hand gestures. Marcus, my mother said softly, taking my hand, are you okay? Really okay? I thought about it. An hour ago, I'd been about to get married. Now I was sitting in an Italian restaurant with tomato sauce on my sleeve and absolutely no idea what came next in my life. Yeah, Mom, I think I am. You gave up your wedding for us. No, I corrected gently. I gave up a bad marriage for myself, for my own dignity, for the chance to find something better. You and the family, protecting you from their cruelty was part of it, but this was ultimately about me refusing to accept being treated as less than. She squeezed my hand, tears in her eyes again. I'm so proud of you. I've always been proud of you, but today you showed them exactly who you are, who we raised you to be. Derek raised his wine glass. Can I make a toast? Is that weird? Go for it, I said. He stood up, and gradually the conversations around the tables died down as people realized something was happening. So, I'm not good at speeches, Derek began. Public speaking is like my personal nightmare. But I gotta say something, because what happened today it was the most incredible thing I've ever witnessed. He turned to look at me. Marcus, I've known you since we were 18. We met in a crappy dorm room where the heat didn't work and the bathroom was down the hall. For 4 years of college and 4 years since, I've watched you work harder than anyone I know. You worked 3 jobs to pay for school. You studied until 2 in the morning and then got up at 6 for your shift. You never complained. You never asked for handouts. You just put your head down and did what needed to be done. People were nodding around the table, my colleagues who'd seen me take on extra projects to prove myself, my family who'd watched me push through exhaustion and stress. And today, Derek continued, I watched you walk into that mansion with your head held high, knowing you were about to blow up your entire life. I watched you stand there while those awful people realized they'd been insulting someone who was worth 10 of them. I watched you choose your dignity over their money and their connections and their approval. His voice got thick with emotion. That takes guts, man. That takes integrity. And I just want you to know that everyone at this table, everyone who matters, is proud as hell of you. You didn't dodge a bullet. You dodged a fucking nuclear missile. People laughed and applauded. Someone shouted, "Hear, hear." My mother was openly crying again, but smiling through it. So here's to Marcus. Derek raised his glass higher. For showing us all what it looks like to stand up for yourself. For teaching us that self-respect isn't negotiable. For being the kind of man who'd rather walk away from everything than compromise his values. And he grinned, for having the biggest balls of anyone I've ever met, walking into that wedding with the owner of the venue and burning it all down in front of everyone. The laughter and applause was louder now. Everyone raised their glasses, even the kids with their juice cups. To Marcus, they chorused. I stood up, my throat tight with emotion. Thank you, all of you, for being here, for supporting me, I had to stop and collect myself. For being my real family, the people who matter. Vincent appeared then with the first course, massive bowls of pasta that his staff began distributing around the tables. Eat, eat, he commanded. You celebrate by eating good food and drinking good wine and being with good people. Everything else? He made a dismissive gesture. Everything else is just noise. We ate. God, we ate. Course after course of incredible food that Vincent kept bringing out. Pasta, then chicken parmesan, then veal marsala, then sides of vegetables and potatoes and salad. The wine flowed freely. Conversations got louder and more animated. At one point, someone started playing music from their phone, and Maria's kids started dancing between the tables. Catherine caught my eye from down the table and mouthed, "You okay?" I nodded and mouthed back, "Thank you." She raised her glass in acknowledgement. As the meal wound down and people were leaning back in their chairs, full and slightly drunk and thoroughly satisfied, my mother stood up. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there looking at me, and gradually people noticed and fell quiet. "I want to say something too," she said, and her voice was stronger than I'd heard it in a long time. "Marcus, when your father died, you were 12 years old. Do you remember what you said to me at the funeral?" I shook my head. The memories from that time were fuzzy, obscured by grief. "You said, 'Don't worry, Mom, I'll take care of us.' You were 12, you were a child, and you'd already decided that you were going to be the man of the family." She smiled through fresh tears. "And you did. You helped with your sister. You worked whatever jobs you could get. You got yourself through school on scholarships and sheer determination. You never asked for anything. You never complained. You just did what needed to be done." She paused, looking around at everyone gathered. Those people today, those Whitmores, they looked at my son and saw someone who wasn't good enough, someone whose genes weren't pure enough for their precious family line, but I look at my son and I see someone who's overcome more obstacles than any of them could imagine. I see someone who's achieved more through hard work than they ever achieved through their inherited money. I see someone with more integrity in his little finger than their entire family has combined. Her voice broke. I see a man I'm desperately proud of, a man his father would have been proud of, a man who any family would be lucky to have. She looked directly at me. And if those people can't see that, if they think you're not good enough, then they're the ones with poor genes. Not you. Never you. The room erupted in applause. People were standing, raising their glasses again, some crying, some cheering. My mother sat down and I moved around the table to hug her, and we stood there crying together while everyone celebrated around us. Vincent appeared at my shoulder with a bottle of his best wine. "This is family recipe," he said quietly. "My grandfather made it. I save it for special occasions. This?" He gestured around the room. "This is special occasion." He poured glasses for me, my mother, and Catherine. Then he raised his own glass. "To finding out who your real family is," he said, "and to having the courage to choose them over anyone else." We drank, and the wine was perfect, rich and complex with flavors I couldn't begin to name. It tasted like celebration, like vindication, like the beginning of something better than what I'd left behind. Later, as people were getting ready to leave, exchanging numbers and promising to stay in touch, Catherine pulled me aside. "How do you feel?" "Terrified," I admitted. "Relieved, sad, hopeful, all of it at once." "That's normal. You just made a huge life change in a very public way. It's going to take time to process." She handed me a business card, different from the one she'd given me at the venue. This one had a personal cell number handwritten on the back. "Call me if you need anything, to talk, to vent, to just have someone remind you that you did the right thing." "Why are you doing all this for me, really?" She smiled. "Because 20 years ago, I walked away from a bad marriage. Not at the altar. I wish I'd had your courage to do it then. I walked away 2 years in, after 2 years of being made to feel small and insignificant by someone who thought his family name made him better than me." She glanced around the room. "I didn't have this. I didn't have people celebrating my choice. I didn't have support. I just had lawyers and loneliness and the fear that I'd made a terrible mistake." "How did you know you hadn't?" "Because every single day after, I felt lighter, freer, like I could finally breathe. That's how you'll know too." She squeezed my shoulder. "Give it a few days. If you start feeling that lightness, that sense of possibility, then you'll know you made the right choice, and I suspect you will." She was right, of course. Within a week, I felt exactly that. Lighter, like a weight I hadn't fully acknowledged I'd been carrying had finally been lifted. Within a month, I couldn't imagine how I'd ever thought marrying Vanessa was a good idea. Within 6 months, I'd look back on the whole thing as the best bad thing that ever happened to me. By that evening, it was the top post on 3 different wedding-shaming subreddit forums. By the next morning, local news outlets were reporting on it. By the end of the week, the story had been picked up nationally, with headlines like "Wedding Canceled After Groom's In-Laws Make Classist Comments" and "Venue Owner Shuts Down Ceremony Over Discrimination." The article Catherine had arranged to be published ran as promised, complete with quotes from several witnesses to the rehearsal dinner. It named names, cited specific examples, and provided context about the long history of elitism in certain wealthy families. The Whitmores came off exactly as badly as they deserved. Richard tried to fight back, of course. His lawyers sent threatening letters to Catherine, to the newspaper, even to me. They threatened defamation suits, breach of contract claims, interference with business relationships. But Catherine's lawyers were better, and more importantly, she had documentation of everything. the venue contract with its discrimination clause, the testimony of her staff member who'd witnessed the rehearsal dinner, the check refunding my money, proving she'd honored the contract termination appropriately. The legal threats went nowhere, but the social fallout for the Whitmores was significant. Several of Richard's business partners quietly distanced themselves from him. Patricia was dropped from 2 charity boards. Their country club memberships were quietly allowed to lapse. In the world they cared so much about, the world of social connections and old money networks and carefully maintained reputations, they'd become pariahs. Vanessa called me 3 times in the first week after the wedding. That wasn't. I didn't answer. The 4th time, she sent a long text message. "Marcus, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but I need you to understand that I was in an impossible position. Those are my parents. I can't just cut them out of my life. I thought if I laughed along with their jokes, it would diffuse the tension, make things easier. I didn't mean to hurt you. I love you. Can we please talk?" I read it 3 times, and each time I was struck by what she didn't say. She didn't say her parents were wrong. She didn't say she regretted laughing. She didn't apologize for choosing their approval over my dignity. She just offered excuses and asked me to understand. I didn't respond. 2 weeks after the canceled wedding, I had lunch with Catherine at that family-owned restaurant she'd mentioned. We'd become genuine friends in the aftermath of everything, bonded by what had happened and by a shared understanding of what it meant to be underestimated by people who thought money made them superior. "How are you doing?" she asked after we'd ordered. "Really?" "Honestly, better than I expected. Sad about Vanessa sometimes. We were together for 3 years. That doesn't just disappear because it ended badly, but also relieved, like I dodged something that would have made me miserable for the rest of my life." "That's exactly right. You dodged a bullet." Catherine took a sip of her wine. "Can I tell you something? When I first met you and Vanessa during the venue tour, I knew immediately it wasn't going to work." "You did?" "The way she talked to my staff, the way she treated Melissa, the casual dismissiveness of anyone she perceived as beneath her. She was polite to me once she realized I owned the place, but that kind of selective respect tells you everything you need to know about someone's character." Catherine paused. "I almost said something to you that day, but I figured you'd learn on your own. I just didn't expect to be there to witness the learning process." "Why did you really do it?" I asked. "The whole dramatic shutdown, the confrontation, all of it. You could have just quietly refunded my money and let me cancel the wedding myself." "Because they needed to face consequences," she said simply. "People like the Whitmores go through life never facing real consequences for their behavior. They say cruel things and make discriminatory comments and hurt people, and then they just move on to the next thing because no one ever holds them accountable. I had the power to hold them accountable, so I did." "Thank you." "You're welcome. Now I have a business proposition for you." "A proposition?" "I'm expanding my business, opening a 2nd venue property, doing some development work on a 3rd. I need someone to manage the financial side, bookkeeping, tax planning, contract negotiations, that kind of thing. I've been looking for an accountant I trust. Someone smart, ethical, someone who understands that business success doesn't require treating people badly." She smiled. "Interested?" I was stunned. "You're offering me a job." "I'm offering you a partnership, actually. 20% stake in the company, salary plus profit sharing, full benefits. You'd be leaving your accounting firm, obviously, but I think you'd find this work more interesting and definitely more lucrative." "Catherine, I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Say you'll think about it. Say anything but no." She pushed a folder across the table. "I had my lawyers draw up a preliminary proposal, look it over, take your time. But Marcus, I built a successful business by finding good people and investing in them. You're good people. I want to invest in you." I looked through the folder, at the proposed salary and profit-sharing arrangements, at the detailed description of what my role would be. It was everything I'd been working toward in my career, handed to me out of nowhere by a woman who barely knew me but had decided I was worth betting on. "I'll think about it," I managed. "But Catherine, this is incredibly generous." "It's business," she corrected. "I'm not being generous. I'm being smart. You're talented, you're ethical, and after the past few weeks, you're also somewhat famous. That's good for my brand." She grinned. "Besides, I like you. I think we'd work well together, and I think you could use a fresh start." She was right. I could. 2 months later, I left my accounting firm and started working with Catherine's company. The work was challenging and interesting, exactly the kind of complex financial management I'd been hoping to do eventually in my career. My mother paid off her loan with the refunded wedding money. I moved into a new apartment, bigger and nicer than the place I'd been renting. Life moved forward, and gradually the pain of what had happened faded into just another part of my story. The time I almost married into the wrong family. The time I chose my dignity over social climbing. The time I learned that sometimes the most expensive thing you can do is say yes to the wrong people. 6 months after the canceled wedding, I got an email from Vanessa. I'm getting married. For real this time. To Preston's college roommate. The Whitmores approve. They're thrilled, actually. His family is old money, too. Properly old money. Not new money trying to prove themselves. I thought you should know. I don't know why I'm telling you. Maybe so you know that I'm moving on. That we're both moving on. I hope you're happy, Marcus. Despite everything, I genuinely hope you're happy. I read it once and then deleted it. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Because I was happy. Happier than I'd been in years. I had work I loved. A boss who respected me. Enough money to finally relax a little. To take my mother out to nice dinners and send my niece and nephew birthday presents that were more than a card with $20 tucked inside. And I'd learned something valuable. That the people who think you're inferior because of where you came from aren't worth impressing. That the right people will see your value without you having to prove it. That sometimes the biggest favor someone can do you is show you who they really are before you make a permanent commitment. The Whitmores gave me that favor, even if they didn't mean to. And Catherine Chen gave me something even more valuable. The reminder that success and wealth and power don't have to come with cruelty, that you can be ruthlessly effective in business while still treating people with basic human decency. That class is about how you treat others, not what your bank account looks like. A year after the canceled wedding, Catherine and I were in her office going over plans for the new venue property when she pulled up a social media post on her computer. You should see this, she said, turning the screen toward me. It was a screenshot of a local news article, posted by someone who'd apparently been at that wedding that wasn't. The headline read, Former elite power couple facing bankruptcy after series of failed business ventures. The article was about Richard and Patricia Whitmore. Their development company was collapsing. Multiple projects had fallen through after investors pulled out, citing concerns about the Whitmores' reputation and management style. They were facing multiple lawsuits from contractors and partners. The article mentioned, almost as an aside, that this financial collapse began shortly after a public incident at a canceled wedding where the family's discriminatory attitudes had been exposed. Karma, Catherine said, raising an eyebrow. Maybe. Or maybe they just weren't as good at business as they thought they were. Hard to maintain success when your whole strategy is based on intimidating people and assuming your name will open every door. Well, their name certainly opened some doors, just not the ones they wanted. She closed the browser window. Speaking of which, I have news. The third venue property, the one we've been developing, it's ready to open. I want you to manage it. Manage it. Catherine, I'm your financial officer. I'm not qualified to. You're more than qualified. You're smart. You understand people. You're good at solving problems. And most importantly, you know how to treat everyone with respect, regardless of their background. That's what makes a good manager in this industry. She smiled. Besides, it's your name on the property deed. I put it in the partnership agreement. 20% stake, remember? That includes ownership of this new venue. I stared at her. I own part of a multi-million-dollar venue property. You do, and you're going to run it, with full authority to hire staff, make decisions, set policies. I trust you. She paused. Actually, I was thinking we should add a specific clause to the contracts for this venue. Something about maintaining a discrimination-free environment. Maybe specify that classism and elitism are grounds for immediate termination of service. What do you think? I thought about the rehearsal dinner, about Richard's toast and Patricia's comments about jeans, about Vanessa's laugh. I think that's perfect, I said. And it was. Because sometimes life gives you exactly what you need, even if it doesn't look like what you wanted. Sometimes the plans that fall apart make room for better plans. Sometimes the people who reject you are doing you the biggest favor they could possibly do. And sometimes, just sometimes, poor jeans turn out to be worth a whole lot more than old money and empty prestige.